So good afternoon and welcome to, I say good afternoon, it's good morning. I'm getting ahead of myself there. So good morning and welcome to the next Cambridge Marketing College webinar series. In this session today, we are going to be looking at SME marketing. I'll explain what it is and we will go through the differences and similarities between SME marketing and big corporate, big brand marketing. Interesting topic, particularly if you're working in a small, medium or micro business. My name is Neil Wilkins. I'm a college fellow and tutor, been with the college for some 20 years now, and I'm a marketing practitioner and consultant. And I live in SME space most of the time. I do have clients who are bigger brands and you might describe as corporates, but this is a world that I'm very, very familiar with. And certainly over the last 15 years, I've been playing with the concept of SME marketing. So I want to share with you some thoughts, ideas, and particularly if you're working with small budgets and in a very small team, might just be you. Hopefully you'll be able to pick up some ideas as we go through this session. Now, this particular webinar is the first in a brand new series. We have a lot of upcoming webinars for you. Basically, the series is going to be happening every fortnight, and this is the first one in this new series. The idea being to support marketers, business developers, business owners, even if you're obviously an SME, you might be the person who's doing everything. And the idea is to be supporting you with the latest thinking, the latest best practice and ideas around a whole host of topics that will hopefully improve your marketing and ultimately improve your business activities. So this one's all about SME marketing and how to get best value from small budgets and small teams. On the 11th of June, we'll be looking at communication skills in all its varying guises. Communication skills used to just be face-to-face, but obviously now as we've moved predominantly over recent months into a digital environment, communication has taken on a whole different range of guises and tones and flavors. So what we'll be doing is we'll be looking at how you can optimize your communication skills, both in a business sense and also personally. Webinar 3 on the 25th of June is going to be about presentation skills, and this is about presenting internally to clients and colleagues and maybe your sort of line management, as well as to customers. So the whole range of different ways that we use presentation skills to their best across a whole different range of media. Extending both of those into webinar 4 on the 9th of July, we'll be looking at the art of persuasion, because presenting and communicating is only as good as the effects that it has. So part of communication and presentation is persuading people, hopefully authentically and transparently, to do things, to act, to respond, if you like. So this is all about influencing behavior. So there's a whole range of different things that we can look at in the concept of persuasion. So I'm really looking forward to that one on the 9th of July. And so the series will progress and we'll be releasing more topics and more ideas in this series as we get a little bit closer to those times. But let's begin with today and actually what we are talking about, which is very much the whole idea of small to medium-sized business marketing. And I'm making the assumption, I mean, some of you listening to this particular session may well work for big brands, but for most of us, we're working in a small to medium-sized organization. It might be commercial, might be not-for-profit, might be a charity. And we're making the assumption here that you don't work for the likes of Apple, Audi, Nike, and the big kind of brands where you have some assumptions, I guess, as to kind of how they are doing their marketing, how they're interacting with customers, how they're operating as organizations. Now, we make the assumption that these are endless teams of marketers. We make the assumption that they have endless budgets and very, very deep pockets to do pretty much whatever they like. They probably got a whole host of data sources feeding in the latest opportunities and the latest reactions as to how their customers are interacting. Now, that in most cases is probably true, or at least some of that could be very true and very close to the reality that big brands face. But if you don't work for a big brand and you are in a small, medium or micro business, the world is going to be very, very different. And you're not going to be in an organization that is actually what you might be thinking if you've never worked in a big brand or on a big sort of brand marketing like that. You might think is a great place to be. Now, I'm going to argue as we go through this particular webinar that actually the better place to be is in SME. It's more exciting, it's more flexible. The fact that you don't have big budgets, actually, to me as a marketer with many decades of experience, is actually much more exciting. Some of the best times I've had in SME marketing is when I've had no budget to spend, I've had no plan, I've had like no real direction, no real kind of goals set even, and then we've been able to create something. So that's what I'm going to kind of talk through as we go through this session, is the big difference really, but also some of the things that we can learn from those big brands. Now, this is most of us. If we look at the European Commission, and they've done some research to kind of scope out just how many SMEs there are across Europe, for example, it actually represents the vast majority of businesses in Europe. 99% of businesses in Europe answer to the category of SME and micro. In other words, these are businesses with less than 250 people. They're turning over less than 50 million euros. And obviously, for a lot of us, that is big business. That sounds like a very significant business. If you have 249 staff and you're turning over 49 million, that's a very good sized business for most of us as we look up to these slightly larger organizations. But the vast majority of us are working in much smaller organizations where we're turning over far less. We're maybe in a small business where, the headcount right across the organization is less than 50. We might only have sort of 20 people within our organization, and we might be turning over a few £1 million or a few million euros. Or, and again, this is where the numbers really significantly open up, is we could be in a micro business, less than 10 people. And of course, if you think about maybe your agency who you use, maybe you're working in a family business, there are many of them. And these are the kinds of organizations that are turning over less than £2 million. And that's not a bad thing. I think a lot of people sort of think, oh, well, that's only a small business, so they're not really contributing that much to the economy. It can't be a great place to do marketing because there's no budget, there's no flexibility. I'm going to argue as we go through this that these are the places where you can have most fun in marketing. This is where real, true marketing really happens. And the big corporates, I'm not going to knock them, the big brands are amazing in their own right, but it's a very different space. Having a big team, having a big budget makes a very different marketing environment, and it makes how you actually define marketing become quite a different thing. So what I want to do is actually talk through this and actually sort of get to figure out with you kind of what you can do and actually what's going to be important. Now, small budgets, there is this assumption that if you're in a small to medium-sized organization, you're not going to have much money to spend. And I guess for a lot of people in smaller businesses, this is predominantly true, but you might be surprised if you look at the research. B2B Marketing Magazine did a survey a couple of years ago about marketing budgets, and they looked at this, and actually there is a significant proportion. If you look at the average of a small business owner, they are going to be putting a significant proportion of their turnover to marketing. Their annual budget is going to be 16% of the budget that they're going to spend on product development, on their people, on their facilities, on their offices, on their delivery to customer. 16% of this, on average, in a small business is dedicated to marketing. Now, the way that's being defined probably is marketing communications, so the upfront, overt face, if you like, of marketing. But as we know, as marketers, there's a lot more that goes into this. So there is a budget there is a budget available, there are things actually happening. Now, you might be sat there thinking or listening to this thinking, well, I don't actually have a budget, I've got to justify every single pound or dollar that I spend. Now, that probably puts you slightly out of kilter with the way that the world is migrating. And certainly over the last 10 years, we have seen a migration, particularly in small businesses who have smaller budgets overall. We've seen a migration of some sort of 40 to 50% on average of the amount of money being invested into marketing. to do the kind of communication things that we're talking about. And so over the last 10 years, marketing is starting to be seen as an important resource, an important investment. And in a small to medium-sized business, that word investment is really important, because often when we talk about budgets, we're looking at the cost to the business. Now, I'm a huge advocate of not using the word cost, because I think we've got a responsibility, and particularly in SME world, for thinking of marketing budget as an investment. In other words, we want to see a return from it. If we view it as a cost, it's just going to be spent and nobody's really going to be looking to see the value from it. But if we think of our SME marketing budget as an investment, then we are putting an accountability and a responsibility on ourselves for reporting back to the business the return that we bring. So that's the first thing I want to really sort of be talking about here, is that we're thinking about marketing in small business as an investment. So if you're being tasked with doing stuff and you're in a smaller organization or even a medium-sized organization, it's about investment of your time, investment of the budget that you're given, even if you have to pitch for every single pound or dollar that you've spent. This is about not just a cost, this is about an investment. So we need to be looking for a return. So I said right at the start, what we're going to be focusing on is actually looking at the differences and similarities of what we normally see in the media. And if we're on a course, for example, most of the examples are going to be big brands, the Coca-Colas, the Microsofts, the IBMs, the Apples, the Googles of this world. But actually, for most of us, what we're looking to do here is to kind of translate some of the best stuff that's happening in those worlds into what we might be able to do on a tactical day-to-day basis in our small business. But there's also stuff that we can do that the big brands can't do. And that, again, is something that I want to cover. And when I was looking to put this webinar together, I was thinking, well, how best to kind of present this? Because there's a whole host of things that we could look at here. And I thought, well, let's take this back to basics. Let's use a marketing mix. I'm not going to say the marketing mix, because depending on who you ask, there are a lot of iterations of this. And as an SME marketer, we should really be focusing on a marketing mix that's relevant for our organization or our business. So the one I'm going to really focus on here, and I've kind of made this up really to fit, it's including lots of P's. The marketing mixes, wherever you look, typically have a lot of P's, started with the 4 P's, became the 7 P's, and now I think there's about 14 or 15 P's, depending on how broadly you look. So the ones I'm going to focus on here and talk to you about are going to be product, planning, place, price, and that will come into this investment thing that I was talking about, promotion, it's important, obviously, people, profit, process, and purpose. Now, some of those in that the latter sort of part of the list, the people, the profit, the process, the purpose, are kind of new sort of post-pandemic revisions, if you like, or additions to the old traditional marketing mix. And we're going to look at those because these could be little things that you can leverage being an SME against bigger brands if you face those bigger brands in your marketplace. In other words, if you're not a market leader or a market challenger, your place in your market sector is a much smaller place. So you could be a market follower. You're kind of watching what the big guys do, and then you're kind of taking the best bits and you're trying to do that yourself. Then you've got to be looking for ways of differentiating, ways of standing out, ways of still being relevant on this other side of the pandemic, because otherwise you're not even in the game. It's one of the big challenges of SME marketing, is remaining in the game. So the thing I'm going to focus on first is the first of the P's, which is product. Okay, now this takes on a whole different guise if we're looking at SME marketing. When we look at big corporates or big brand product marketing, there typically tends to be new product development teams. You get product managers who aren't responsible necessarily for the communications of the product. They're looking to align customer need with the definition of the product. So it's very much about the tech of the product. In SME marketing, you probably have to do this as part of your day job. So what we need to look at here is differentiation. How can we, if we're working against the big guys, if we've only got small, limited, or no budget at all, how can we actually do proper product marketing? Well, I would say in SME world, one of your starting points is to consider the word niche. Okay, niche marketing can often be frowned upon by big brands because it's like, oh, well, that's just a niche. We want to work at scale. We want to do big marketing stuff. We want to get our products out to broad markets and stuff. And okay, they might have the bandwidth and the capability of doing that. In SME marketing, starting with a niche that you can become really intimate with can be one of the most profitable ways that you can focus your business. So I would say always start local, start in a niche sector, could be geographically, it could be a specific definition of a customer type, for example. It might be a niche product. It might be that your product does something that nobody else does, and this gives you a unique selling point. Focus on the things that are most profitable. Niches can be hugely profitable. You don't have the wastage of spreading yourself too thin. So think about niche. Can we focus? And it's always the 80-20 rule. You've probably heard this one before. If you've listened to any of my other webinars, you'll know that I'm a keen advocate of the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. You will get 80% of your profits from 20% of your products. It just works like that. I don't care what sector you're in. I don't care what your product groups are. If you have multiple products, check the numbers. 80% of your profit will come from 20% of your products. So if you can figure out what those 20% of your products are, niche down on those, double down is the phrase currently in vogue, double down on those and make sure that you're getting best value from those. Focus on your niches. You can afford to do that when you're in SME marketing. When you identify some of those little unique features or patterns or things that you do and that make your product special, protect your IP. If you can get patents, trademarks, or whatever you need to do to protect your IP, that is going to make you more sustainable as an SME business. Your responsibility as a marketer to kind of own this thing, because there may well be nobody else in your business who's going to do this. This can really future-proof you, makes you very, very strong as an SME organization. And the other thing with product I'd suggest you do is focus on what's called your augmented services. If you don't know what the augmented services are, I suggest you have a little Google around on this one because it's a really good way of differentiating. Augmented services are those, and I like to call it the wrapper around the core product or service that you have. What are those extra things, those extra little valuable things that can be perceived as really important by your customer? You give them the wow factor. You add a little bit of extra quality into the service. You do something a little bit differently. Maybe you give a little bit of extra warranty or extra guarantee on the product that you offer. This is your augmented services. Figure out what you can do. It's about differentiation. It's about personalization. It's about being just a little bit special. It's about protecting it and making sure that you own it. Okay, this is where thought leadership can come in. If you're doing something that nobody else is doing, own it and protect it. This is what's going to make you sustainable. It's a really powerful thing that you can do that often, and it really is often, the big brands aren't able to do. One of the things that big brands are very, very good at, generally and typically, because they have to, because they're coordinating multiple teams over multiple offices, maybe over multiple countries, is that they're very, very strong. I don't necessarily say they're very good, but they're very, very strong at planning. They've probably got marketing planners. They've probably got a marketing strategy which aligns their day-to-day activity with the high-level goals of the organization. Now, you probably don't have that. You know, I speak to a lot of SMEs who have no form of marketing strategy or plan at all. They're just literally flying in the wind. You know, if an opportunity arises to do something on social, they'll just go and do that. They don't know why they're doing it. There's no kind of measurement going on. They're just doing it. They're making noise and they're contributing to the kind of chaos that is out there right now. That's obviously not going to be helpful. But what is helpful is to have some kind of marketing strategy. In other words, a goal that is kind of driven towards the horizon that gives you a direction. It allows you, it's a little bit like having a route map for your business and for your marketing tactics. It kind of points you in roughly the right direction. So the strategy is your 3 to 5 year view of where you're looking to take the business. But the beauty of this is, of course, you don't necessarily, because there's nobody here telling you you've got to do it in SME world, you don't necessarily have a rigid marketing strategy. that comes down from a big global parent company that's telling you the rules, telling you how you've got to do this. So you've got flexibility, which is great. It's a real positive, that. And what it allows you potentially to do is to pivot. Now, this is a phrase, or a word rather, that we didn't really use, I would say, probably 18 to 24 months ago. But now, because of the pandemic and because of the huge upheavals in commercial world across the planet, the concept of pivoting is becoming a reality. In other words, this is where our business has to take a sometimes 90-degree turn. Sometimes it's actually a 180-degree turn, and we go backwards, because it's for the right reasons, because what we're looking to do is realign ourselves with a market opportunity. Or maybe our old marketplace has just died. Maybe there isn't a marketplace there anymore. So we're having to pivot our business. We're having to turn the whole of the business to point in a different direction. Now, pivoting in SME world is a much easier thing to do, because you don't have those legacy processes. You don't have those legacy strategies and multiple opinions coming from multiple different departments. So you've got the luxury of being able to do things quickly, responsibly, and as you see opportunities develop. But of course, this is the flip side of it, and there's always a flip side with these things. You've got to watch out for knee-jerk reactions. I see a lot of marketing happening in SME world where there's there's a shiny thing, and then the whole business points in that direction, and then, oh, look over there, there's another shiny thing. It's different to this shiny thing, but we must go and chase that. And they end up chasing their tail. Watch out for knee-jerk reactions. You can start to prevent those happening, or at least filter them in or out properly with good, sound business decision making if you've got this marketing strategy. So get the strategy in place. Doesn't have to be a huge 50,000 page document. This is probably 1 or 2 sides of A4 kind of marketing strategy that's just directional and agreed throughout your business. Then you can use that as the filter to filter in opportunities, but to avoid those knee-jerk reactions. It's really important to kind of use that ability to plan, but don't plan to an nth degree. Next P I want to talk about is place. This is the kind of the physicality, if you like, of your organization. Now, be that a venue, be that an office, be that a warehouse, be that a production line, whatever you define in your business as being the place where we are, the place where we meet. Could be a digital place. A lot of organizations now are saying, well, we're never going to meet again. We're only going to meet on Zoom or, through Skype. We're not actually going to physically get together, and we can still do business like that. Okay, so for you, then you're having to define maybe a digital place. But for most organizations in SME world, there is some kind of physicality. So there is a geography, there's probably a location, there's a place that potentially opening up again, customers and suppliers and stakeholders can now come and visit. Place in SME world is often small. Okay, it's probably a little bit more personalized than you would see with a big brand where, you have the big signage over the entrance hall to a big, glamorous, glossy looking office. But the nice thing about place in SME world is you can introduce the concept and the word boutique. Again, another word like pivoting that didn't really exist in the old paradigm of marketing. But boutique businesses are now becoming very fashionable and very attractive to customers. Because what does boutique inspire? Well, it inspires the idea that, yeah, I'm not going to go for a big brand. I'm going to shop local. And I want to go for these guys because they're independent. They're kind of more of a boutique kind of service. It is personalized, it is customized, it is bespoke, and it allows you to obsess about the quality of what you offer and not just go chasing quantity. The quantity out there now is questionable. You look at all markets, all the latest kind of media research and stuff that's coming out is saying that, we're not really quite sure how a lot of these marketplaces are going to kind of, bounce back. And the economy is, it's looking okay, but it's questionable. There's a lot of uncertainty. So rather than go chasing the big numbers, why don't you go chasing and obsessing about the quality of the offer? And that does include the boutique nature of being smaller. So celebrating it. Because of course, the vanity of chasing the big numbers and just looking for revenue growth really at this stage means nothing. What you want to be doing is protecting your brand and adding in this concept of boutique and personalization and customization to protect your small to medium-sized business or micro business into the future. So if we take vanity out of the equation here and just say, no, we're going for full-on quality, we're going to get this right because we want to protect ourselves. We know our niche. We know that we're focusing on investing everything we do. So we want a return. So one of the returns that you can be looking for here is that kind of advocacy from the customers who now get it. They might get this new way that you're actually marketing to them. So get testimonials, get that advocacy, get that evidence that you're doing the right thing. It's really exciting, actually, when you think about how you can bounce back differently. If you bounce back in a way that is looking to achieve the old normal, you're missing the point of the opportunity here. SME marketing has a whole host of opportunities here to redefine and actually create a new normal. Yes, there it is. I've used the phrase, the new normal going forward. You know, we're recreating marketing here. We're redefining it. We're using different terminology. And one of the things that we really need to do is to really get a grasp on actually delivering against the numbers, actually delivering some real value, not just chasing the pounds and pennies and shillings and the pence and the dollars and the euros, but actually doing things in a proper way, really thinking about our numbers as investment. So when we think about the next P, which is price, one of the things I'm going to sort of bundle into that is budget, because, you know, I talked a little bit about budget, but it is such a sensitive concept within SME marketing, because most SMEs are chasing cash because they have this mindset that it's all about the short term, it's all about the numbers this month, and we've got to chase the cash because otherwise we won't be here next month. Now, I've seen a lot of organizations buck that trend and actually say, you know, we're not going to do that. We're not just going to chase cash because it just makes us so tactical. It doesn't feel like a great quality place to be working. It doesn't feel like we're really getting the best value from our organization. And because if you're chasing cash, you're probably going to be discounting. And if you're discounting, can you actually afford to do that right now? Wouldn't it be better to niche, to add value, to pivot where there is an opportunity, to double down on the things that are most profitable and actually provide added value service? Well, as an SME marketer, that's what you can do. That is your accountability and responsibility. So forget the discount. You don't need to discount right now. You know, the world is looking for value. The world is looking for accessibility and personalization. Become boutique. Add the price up, you know, increase the price, increase the value. This is where profitability comes on this new side of the pandemic. And really push your organization to support you with a view to medium-term gains as well as short-term gains. It is about this month's numbers, of course it is. You know, we have to have a profitable business. We've got to see new customers. But at the same time, it is also about taking that sort of foot off the gas slightly to then focus as well on the medium term, because you can let your SME competitors chase the numbers whilst you then create the value that is going to become more sustainable. You've got a huge opportunity. It's an opportunity like we've never had before in marketing. So seize the moment because it might never be like this again. And when it comes to the next P, which is promotion, you've got a huge opportunity here to punch above your weight if you choose to do so. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily punching above your weight in terms of scale, because if you haven't got the budgets, you probably from a promotional sense can't do that. But certainly you can punch above your weight in terms of messages, in terms of customer intimacy, in terms of engagement on social, in terms of that niching, that doubling down on that whole boutique positioning. You can do this if you decide that you're going to really own a topic, become thought leader on a particular subject, and you really go for this. There's nothing the big brands can do to get you out of the way because you're going to own it. Social has opened up, as we know, opportunities to really be quite something. You can certainly be a micro-influencer if you can spot the right message and you can put that out on the right networks to hit the right people and engage with them at the right time. If you can get that bit right, you can really punch above your weight. So be proud to be different. Be proud to not be the sheep that's just following the rest of the marketplace and doing something differently. But of course, one of the other things that the big corporates actually and the big brands do is that they are very, very consistent. What I'm suggesting to you here might start to take you down a route of innovation that allows you to change things and do things differently, and then you lose sight of your core values. So what I'm saying is here, know your brand guidelines. Set a series of statements and a series of kind of rules, if you like, that you can then use as self-checks to make sure that you know the boundaries as to how far you can take this. Because yes, I'm selling this great opportunity of being an SME marketing, but you also still have to balance that with being consistent. So one of the things that the big brands do is they have brand guidelines because they've got multiple people, teams of people, hundreds of people, even thousands of people communicating with customers and communicating with the outside world. So for consistency, they have to have brand guidelines. Otherwise, it's a free-for-all and nobody would really understand their brand. And of course, we do understand the big brand values. So get yourself almost a subset, get yourself a little series of guidelines that will keep you, and if you have others or if you use an agency, keep you all kind of joined together and consistent. So be proud to be different. Yeah, do innovate. Yeah, try things and be different. But know the brand guidelines, know the rules of engagement, so that from your customer's perspective, there is a consistency of the way that you communicate. So what we're doing is we're taking almost like the best bits from big brand marketing, and we're saying, okay, we'll take that bit in, we'll put that bit in, but also we're going to use the value of being small, because that is what will differentiate us from the big brands. And of course, one of the huge things that is different is people. Not just the numbers of people, but also the style of people. If you do any kind of research into the differences of people who work for big brands versus the people who work for SMEs, there's one thing I think that you probably will find, and I'm not saying there aren't entrepreneurial types and innovators in big brands, of course there are, but it gives you the opportunity, if you're an SME, to recruit proactively people who've just got that little more of an entrepreneurial, little bit more of an innovator kind of ethos behind them. People who are a little bit more sort of risk takers, willing to kind of put themselves out a little bit more. You know, if you're going to be taking some of these actions forward, you're going to have to be creative. I'm not saying necessarily creative in terms of design, but creative in terms of thinking. SME marketers can afford to be a little bit more entrepreneurial, maybe dabble a little bit more, because they don't have that big corporate stick whacking them all the time, which you have to do it like this, you have to be restrained and retained like this. They get a bit more flexibility. So use that opportunity to take that into the organization. Stay lean though, and a team. You know, I do see a lot, and particularly in sort of agency world and creative organizations, I see a lot of agency owners talk about, yeah, we're going to scale up, we're going to do this and this and this. And I'm thinking, whoa, what's brought you to the success that you have today? It's not just about growing as a team in size, it's about staying lean and focused. So remembering that you can actually outsource and surround yourself with external experts and partners who can bring those little additional skills. You don't necessarily have to scale up. Being small and tight and lean is a real positive thing, as we've already seen. So play to that strength. Don't necessarily think you just have to grow, and don't necessarily think, even if you're a sole practitioner of marketing in your business, don't just think, oh, I've got to get an assistant. You can use the community around you, community of professionals, community of experts, community of real specialists to give you that bandwidth that you need. So don't necessarily think it's all about recruitment. It might be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Celebrating being SME is also about retaining that sort of lean nature that got you to where you are today. And of course, being small has the flip side. And all of these things, as I say, there's a yin and a yang against all of this, because being small gives you very little chance of economies of scale. In other words, you're not going to probably, when you're sourcing products or services, you're not going to get the best price, because you can't buy at volume, you can't buy at scale because of the size that you are versus the big brands. But the flip side to that, and back to the positive, is that you have fewer mouths to feed. So the financial pressure on you, you could argue, is slightly less. So rather, as I said earlier, than obsessing about the cash, obsess about the return on investment of all of your resources. You do have to be obviously conscious of the cash. You still have to be here tomorrow, but think about that return on the investment of the time that you're spending in your marketing. Think about the return on the investment of the people that you're investing in, and think about the time, the investment rather, of the budget that is going to be very, very sparse. And definitely be reporting on what happens with your investment against all those things. How did that little campaign work out? If you only invest $20, $30, $40 on a particular campaign, might be some Facebook ads or something, know what happened. Why did it happen? Could you have done something differently? It's so important, because you can't afford to be wasting those resources when you're in SME. Another thing that you can also do is think about your process. It's great in SME world because processes are much shorter. The sign off for getting things done is a lot tighter. You probably don't have great big databases that you have to tap into, and you could say, well, yeah, and that's not a good thing, because I'd much rather have a customer relationship management system. But maybe for your business that's niching, that's boutique, that's getting, it's pivoting into a new market, that's keeping it all really tight and lean, super profitable, maybe a spreadsheet is enough. Don't overcomplicate this. Keep the processes simple. But whilst you do that, remember there's legality that you must follow. So process comes almost in two guises. One is how effective and efficient you are. In other words, getting from A to B, delivering that campaign, doing your strategy, running your tactical stuff. But at the same time, remembering the rules. So GDPR, perfect example. Just because you're doing stuff on a spreadsheet in an SME marketing sense doesn't mean you can not follow the rules. We all as marketers have an accountability to doing this stuff professionally. So remember to upskill in your GDPR, all of the data protection stuff, your advertising standards. You've got to know these rules because you're a professional marketer. And with that in mind, it's making sure when you're getting support and approval from around the business, you're not just doing it from a sense of, oh, I don't have any real sign-offs, therefore I'm not going to get any sign-offs, I'm just going to do it myself. Get the buy-in from around the business, but make sure the business is signing off on the appropriate things. I've always got this kind of mantra for SME clients where I say, don't let the managing director decide. The fact the managing director doesn't like that tone of orange and would prefer it a little bit lighter is irrelevant. The managing director signing off on some creative is probably not your wisest move. They're not the customer. So seek customer feedback, get some friendlies in, do some focus groups, get some real tangible data. Help and educate your MD. I'm using the MD as an example here, but anybody in your business who's got a view of, oh, well, I can do marketing in my sleep. I don't need to be a marketer. It's easy. Don't get them making your decisions. In SME, that often is the case. The MD or the management team or whatever start to make those decisions. They're not qualified to make those decisions. They're qualified to do what they do. You're the one who should be developing the relationships with those who will help you to get that sign off. And it could be that your managing director has got a marketing qualification, knows a bit about it, and is customer focused. And then if so, great. But just as a rule of thumb, make sure that the decision-making process is in your overall marketing process is with the right people, and that it's super efficient and doesn't take up too much time, and also doesn't lead you astray. Very, very easy to do that if you don't have this formal process behind you. And one of the latter things I really wanted to talk about, again, when we look at differentiation in SME, is the whole reason for being an SME. Your overarching or underpinning purpose can drive everything. So, we're looking here for differentiation. Well, one of the things that will potentially give you a really sustainable competitive advantage, really differentiate you from the competition, the other SMEs, maybe bigger brands in your marketplace, is your higher purpose. What do you stand for as an organization? What is your sustainability credentials? How do you treat customers and your people? What are you doing for the environment? What is your carbon footprint? Are you sourcing products from ethical sources? Your customers want to know this. So as you go down this kind of SME, boutique, niche, profitable approach that really is going to sustain you as a business, make sure that you align it with your higher purpose. And understand really that what you're doing is you're playing your game. You're setting the new rules this side of the pandemic. You're going to have some real fun with this stuff. You're not playing to the old paradigm of marketing. You're not playing to the big brand paradigm of marketing. You're not just following what others do because others tell you this is the way it's done. You're redefining how you do business and how you communicate that to your customers. And if you do it with this underpinning or overarching deeper purpose and reason that your business exists, you're going to be in a really strong position to protect that medium term as well as that longer term view. So we can, as SME marketers, we can pretend. This is the final one of my P's, which is a little extra one I've cheekily added in at the end here. We can do this. This isn't being a big corporate where we are restrained rather by, the rules, the regulations, the other teams, the sign-offs, the way that we've always done it. We've got the ability to play a bit. We've got the ability to experiment a bit. We've got the ability to test and really listen, get really intimate with our customers so that we really understand what it is they want, and then we can deliver that and deliver profit to our organization. Yes, that core definition of marketing still applies. It's very, very simple and it's very, very profound. But the way that we're going to do it here is we're going to evaluate what the big guys have been doing and already spending their money on developing. We're going to evaluate and watch what they do, take out the best bits, and then just do it better because we can. We're going to do it more responsively because we can. We're going to do it more effectively and efficiently in a way that the customer really appreciates because we can. If you're in a big corporate and you're watching and listening to this, this probably sounds like a great place to be, doesn't it? So I'm a huge advocate of SME marketing. I think the differences that SMEs can make, as long as they stay lean, as long as they stay keen, and as long as they focus on that word investment, because that really is what it's all about. So SME marketing is literally like having your own business. If you're a very small team, or you are, as I said earlier, the sole practitioner of marketing, it is in effect your business. You're accountable for that warming up of the marketplace so the salesperson can go in and sell product or service. It might even be that that's your role too. So everything might start and end with you. Certainly from a marketing perspective, it does. So own this thing, own it, take responsibility and really have fun with it. You're in a really blessed position here. It is so, so different to big brand, but there's a huge opportunity here because you do live by the cash you're going to make this month, but you also live by the ROI into the future because you don't want to just have this business for this month. You want to protect it over the horizon. And look, if I'm being perfectly honest, the most fun I've had in, and this isn't a note to my existing clients because budget is always quite helpful, but there's no need for a budget really if you're smart. There's so many opportunities to do great marketing without any budget at all. There's so much stuff. If we're really smart and can figure this out, there's no real need to be spending money. And what is the ROI on a budget of 0? It's 100% every time. It's just amazing. It means every upside that we can create from doing this is upside that goes back to the business's bottom line. And if you're in an SME world, that is the way that you do marketing today, as well as setting up the paradigm for the future for tomorrow. So that's where I would suggest you start. That's where I'm going to stop. I'm going to ask Lauren to sort of open up the chat and just see if there's any sort of comments that have come through at all or any observations. If you have any questions, I'm going to go to a little bit of a Q&A now. To anybody who has any questions over anything I've covered here. And if you disagree, if you're in an SME marketing role and you think, Neil, you are deluded. In my business, it just doesn't work like that, then let me know. It'd be really, really interesting to hear any feedback. So I'm going to pass over to Lauren and let me know if there are any questions at all in the Q&A.
Okay, we haven't got any questions yet, Neil, but I'll leave it a couple of more minutes and just see if anyone's got anything they want to ask you. Okay, so it's an open opportunity for anybody
who wants to either challenge or to ask any specific questions about anything that I've covered, use the little chat facility here on this session and just pop your question in. And whilst you're thinking your question or typing it in, just a little reminder of the upcoming events that we have in this series. This one, as I mentioned at the start, is the first of this new series, specifically this one to SME marketing. The future webinars are to everyone in marketing. And as I say, the next one will be the communication skills on the 11th of June. And to keep up to date with all of these, I would suggest you just head over to marketingcollege.com/events. Where you'll get a little bit more of a description of each one as we add more into the series. You'll see the full schedule and you will be able to book on through that. So go to marketingcollege.com/events. And of course, I'm broadcasting comments and webinars and ideas and narrative like this through my personal podcast, which is, if you search Neil Wilkins X online, you'll find it, or if you use Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, you can find me at Neil Wilkins Podcast. And you can also go through to the Cambridge Marketing College podcast, which is the Cambridge Marketing Podcast. Yes, does what it says on the tin, and a whole host of really interesting interviews and topics and debates on this and other marketing topics there as well. So yeah, let's connect anywhere on social media. You'll find me. If we're not connected already on LinkedIn and you're listening or watching to this, yeah, let's connect on LinkedIn, because I do share lots of stuff that I see in my travels, which hopefully might be useful. And if you want to come and have a chat with me on LinkedIn, feel free to do so. Always love to be challenged on the topic of marketing. So I'm not here to be agreed with. Come and disagree with me as well. That would be great.
Okay, we've got a question. So Lydia is asking, for a fledgling micro company, what would you say the first priority is for a marketer?
Lovely question. Yeah, because there's so many people, I think. Thanks for this one, Lydia, because there's so many people now kind of starting their own businesses up or looking to go freelance and create a business around that. I would suggest take your time with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or a glass of water and just sit back in a seat, somewhere nice and quiet, and actually create yourself a little bit of a plan. Okay, I'm not talking about over planning here. One of the planning tools that I always advocate is Paul Smith's SOSTAC. If you haven't come across that, go to sostac.org. That's SOSTAC.org. You can get a bunch of different templates there and read up on that as a planning framework. If you don't have a plan, you will, as I've said before, you'll just be blowing in the wind and you'll just find yourself drifting at everybody else's whim. And that's quite an uncomfortable way of running a business. So if you're a micro business, I would suggest, particularly if you're looking to plan maybe the initial digital footprint that you're going to be creating with your website and your social media, is create a little SOSTAC plan that will give you a structure over why you're going to be doing stuff. Okay, because one of the easiest things to do is to say yes to everything, but actually one of the cleverest and smartest things to do is to start saying no. And if you've got yourself a plan, you can then use that as the filter for filtering in opportunities or filtering them out, looking at different markets and then filtering those markets into the mix or filtering them out. If you don't have a plan, you don't have that filter, and you'll end up saying yes to everything. And you'll find yourself, run ragged by just being super busy, but not super effective. So yeah, that's what I would suggest, Lydia. Great question. Start with a plan, but keep it simple. Do this over an hour, over a coffee or cup of tea, and yeah, enjoy the process. If you're starting up in a fledgling organization, you'll never be this fledgling organization again. So have fun with it, really enjoy it. Look for the opportunities, figure out what your core skill set is, and kind of build it up from there. But SOSTAC will give you all the little building blocks and the checklist to use.
Great, thank you. I think the answer might be similar to this next question, but Fakri is asking if you could recommend a framework to identify market opportunity.
Yeah, and I think really it sort of comes from a lot of this, and I think a lot of people, when they think about market research, they think, oh, I've got to get out there. But I think it is a very good question, because I think it does come from within. In other words, you've got to start to figure out, what are my core competencies? And the difference between competencies and capabilities are, the competencies are the things that you're better at than the competition. In other words, the things that will make me different because I'm really good at them as a business or as an individual. Once you've got those in your mind, you can then use, again, it's another filter, you can then start to use those things to kind of filter out all of the market opportunities that you begin to see. So I would say, yes, start from within, because there's 1,001 different opportunities out there right now. But if you begin from, this niching idea again, figure out what it is that's really close to home in terms of your competencies, because then that will start to align you with kind of where I could go from here and how I could take these out to the world.
Brilliant, thank you. The last few comments that I've got in the question box are just really nice reviews, to be honest. So people are saying, many thanks for the session. It was very useful. They found the session a relief, having run their marketing in this manner, and they felt like they were just winging it a bit, so they're relieved, which is really nice to hear. And that they found it really interesting. So thank you so much for your time, Neil. It was really good.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, and it's great, and I think if you still feel like you are sort of running a little bit ragged sort of with this, and you're listening to this, as I think is, just feel like, you're in a fun place. And I think that is the thing. It is very, very easy to get kind of swept along with being very busy. And as I said earlier, if you're the sole marketer in your business, often it does feel a bit of a lonely journey. So that's why we've always sort of suggesting through Cambridge Marketing Colleges, kind of join our community, come along to these webinars, because you do feel a little bit more part of this marketing community, because, we are all facing the similar sorts of challenges. So yeah, to sort of keep in touch. It's a really lovely comment. Thanks for sharing that, whoever posted that. But yeah, I think it's a key thing that, we are all in this together, even though we don't necessarily see each other all the time. So yeah, have some fun with it, but use all those P's, and just use that really to kind of just almost sort of just bring yourself down a little bit as a marketer, just kind of ground yourself a little bit and just celebrate the things that you're doing really well. I think that's another thing really to note is, it's very easy just to get swept along and with the business as usual. But if you can really celebrate the stuff that you're doing well, it is important, because, it is busy and it is tough out there. There's no sort of denying there's a lot of chaos out there, a lot of uncertainty. But let's just celebrate the fact that, we've got all these opportunities. It is exciting. And so, yeah, get grounded, and you can then sort of from that grounded basis, you can start to figure out and sort of get smart with what you do. But certainly saying no is a very, very good principle. You don't have to do everything to be really successful.
Great, thank you. I'm just double checking the question box. Another couple of nice comments, just saying perfect timing as I'm busy setting up a micro enterprise today. And thank you, Neil, a great recap on marketing process. So no more questions in the chat box.
Great, that's really good. But thanks for all your kind sort of comments. And as I say, let's definitely connect. If you're setting up that micro business and you just want a few little pointers or maybe a link to something, feel free to sort of connect with me on well, particularly LinkedIn, but Twitter, Facebook, I'm everywhere. So just look for Neil Wilkins X, and yeah, happy to take any DMs from anybody at any time. Always willing to sort of point people in the right direction. As I say, we're all in this together. Thanks for your lovely comments, and yes, we'll see you in the next webinar.